Jonambalo hilote, Jonambalo hilote.
Malala Joya has been described as the bravest woman in Afghanistan after her historic speech in the parliament against the warlords. She was expelled from the parliament in 2007, and she now lives in hiding under severe threats. She has received a number of international awards, and we are very proud and very happy to have you here amongst us today.
Hello and good morning. In the name of democracy and peace, dear friends, I'm thankful to Norwegian PEN and the Freedom of Expression Foundation for inviting me to this forum, which is an opportunity for me to share the painful story of my devastated country with you. The topic of the forum is freedom of expression, a value that we in Afghanistan are deprived of it for decades while living under the brutal and undemocratic regimes. In our country, to express your opinion and point of view openly, you have to face death, threats, and risks. After 9/11, the Bush administration and allies invaded Afghanistan to topple the Taliban under the banner of freedom, democracy, and human rights. But the US and its allies fabricated the Northern Alliance criminal warlords with the mask of democracy and brought them to power. It is due to the wrong and devastating policies of the US government and NATO countries that unfortunately today Afghanistan is a mafia state and ranked in top most unstable and corrupt countries in the world. Despite many hue and cries about freedom of expression and press, Afghanistan remains one of the bloodiest countries for the journalists and those who dare to voice the truth. Out of 169 countries in the World Press Freedom Index, Afghanistan is put low on the list in 142. As an elected member of the Afghan parliament, my own case speaks for itself. For exposing the nature of the Afghanistan parliament, which is full of the warlords and drug lords, I was threatened to be raped and even killed right inside the parliament house and finally unlawfully suspended. When freedom of expression does not exist in the parliament of a country for its elected representative, one can easily feel what will be the situation for the ordinary people. Afghanistan is a haven for abuser of human rights and fundamentalist terrorists, but those who speak for justice and democracy are under much pressure. The Western countries are only supporting criminals in Afghanistan and are there for their own strategic, economic, and regional interest for which they are sacrificing poor Afghan people. The prominent case of Parviz Kambakhsh, a young Afghan journalist, has been publicized around the world, which very well portrays the mockery of freedom and justice in Afghanistan. Kambakhsh was sentenced to death for downloading material from the internet that questioned the conditions of women in Islam, which was termed anti-Islamic by the warlords, and he was sentenced to death. In a country where gang, drug mafia, power, and money have an upper hand, and the whole nation is living under the shadow of war and fundamentalism, in a male chauvinist society where half of its population's women are not considered human beings and face tyranny and injustice, freedom of expression and other basic human rights are just mere slogans defined to nice words on paper. In a country where its culture and information minister belongs to the terrorist band of Gulbuddin Hekmatyar, which is in the blacklist of the UN. How can we expect to have freedom of speech and expression? This minister is so anti-woman that he does not want to be photographed by a female photographer. There are no human rights and democracy in Afghanistan because there is a jungle law prevailed across Afghanistan, and our legislation, executive, and judicial bodies are infected with the viruses of fundamentalism. The US and its allies are busy in warlordization, criminalization, and drug lordization of our wounded land. And billions of money spent in our country only makes the warlords and human rights abusers more powerful than before. Afghanistan has presidential election scheduled in few months' time. But everyone knows that the election is also a show to and throwing dust in the eyes of our people. And the actual choice is with the White House to select its next puppet in Afghanistan and gives him legitimacy through this show. Afghanistan Constitution clearly banned those accused of war crimes from running for the election, but the list of candidates have many accused of serious war crimes and brutalities against our people. Hamid Karzai, who seems to be the choice of the White House, selected two infamous warlords as his vice president. Human Rights Watch have documented many crimes by these warlords and wrote about one of them recently. To see Fahim back in the heart of the government would be a terrible step backward for Afghanistan. He is one of the most notorious warlords in the country, with the blood of many Afghans on his hands from the civil war. He is widely believed by many Afghans to be still involved in many illegal activities, including running armed militias, as well as giving cover to criminal gangs and drug traffickers. Karzai is insulting the country with this choice. But we Afghans know that despite international condemnation by human rights organizations and protest by Afghan people, Karzai will be the next president with the two criminals as his vice president. Dear friends, unfortunately, I have very little time to describe you what jokes are being made to my suffering and crying people under the banner of democracy and human rights. I just described few of the examples to show how democracy and human rights are tools in the hands of few enemies of these values to suppress our people. And it is painful to see that Western media also trumpet these disgusting shows as a sign of democracy in Afghanistan. I think in countries like Afghanistan, where religious extremism controls the society, first of all, we should establish secularism as an integral part of democracy. Otherwise, religion can easily be misused to limit human rights and democratic principles. Democratic and justice-loving institutions and individuals of Afghanistan, despite limitations and pressures, are working hard to uphold human rights and democratic values. But we need the help and support of human rights defenders around the world to carry on the task. I'm honored that my voice has become the voice of my oppressed and unfortunate people, and they are supporting me. I announce from your tribune that I will not stop for a moment from telling the truth in the face of death threats and intimidations, as I know to achieving our rights requires efforts and risks, and no one will donate us freedom of expression and other human rights unless we struggle for achieving them. I believe in inspiring words of Dr. Martin Luther King. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. Freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. Thank you very much.